Welcome to the Irish NFL show in association with QuinnBet. It's the final countdown. Super Bowl 60 will be a rematch of the Patriots and Seahawks game from 2011, a long-awaited rematch on the biggest stage. We've got 2 weeks to look forward to that one. All four of us, thankfully, will be there. We can't wait for that. But right now, we're going to look back at how the two teams made it to Santa Clara for the showpiece event as we review the AFC and NFC Championship games. Kieran Boyle, Brian O'Leary and Kieran O'Donovan here with me, Conor Brophy, to do just that. Before we get to the NFC Championship game, otherwise known as the good one, let's talk about the AFC Championship game, such as it was. Kieran, this reminded me of when you go and see, Kieran Boyle, sorry, this reminded me of when you go and see a band on their reunion tour and they get on stage and they say, oh, we're just going to play one from our new album. No, nobody wanted to see that. And nobody wanted to see this. Like we were just saying before we came on air, I don't mind a scrap in the mud for a knife. I love a defensive slugfest. This game was just completely ruined by the weather. Like neither team could do anything in the second half. So what we saw just after halftime effectively was game.
Yeah, it was a tough watch in periods. I mean, the first half, you know, it lent itself to some running play, and you know the ball was being thrown around a little bit. But yeah, like you said, once the second half started and the snow came down, I mean, it was just shut the doors and let's get home for the Patriots. That was their mentality. Let's just get out of here with a win. I mean, I guess we've just been spoiled on some amazing offensive games this season. And, you know, when it comes to the crunch, I mean, we see it in other sports and other, you know, semifinals or games with a huge, you know, something huge on the line that, you know, it doesn't always, you know, live up to the expectations. I don't think anyone, obviously, none of us here were expecting an offensive juggernaut or an onslaught. And, you know, obviously with the weather that set in, that was never going to happen. But yeah, I mean, it was, I guess we're all glad it was the first game so we could kind of finish the day watching football with a positive outlook and a you know,
or just football.
Well,
let's see some actual football.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when you're playing in places like that, and listen, the weather has been brutal across the country, except Florida, all weekend. And, you know, it's just, you know, the elements are out there and it was just going to happen. And it's January football. And we've seen it plenty of times in the past, the Patriots and the Raiders all those years ago. But, you know, we all talk about how fun snow games are, but it took away from the spectacle yesterday to an extent. But it highlighted the deficiencies especially for Denver on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, you know, they started off pretty nicely with Stidham. Everyone's getting a little excited about what he could do. And that followed by 55 minutes of futility where nothing could happen. I think the first down of the second half came with 10 minutes left or at the 10-minute mark in the fourth quarter. So that shows you how much they struggled on the offensive side. For the Patriots, I mean, they did what they had to do. They just kept giving the ball back to the Broncos in the fourth quarter and said, you know, come and have a go. If you think you're hard enough, come and get a score. We dare you. And you know, I think we all knew that really wasn't going to happen.
It's remarkable, and I know I don't want to do Mike Vrabel a disservice in any respect here because he's a very, very different coach from Bill Belichick in all of the most positive ways. He's a much warmer, more empathetic human being than Belichick ever was with his players. And, you know, you can see that, and you can see how they warm to him and how they rally around him. And we could see that even from training camp, and we've talked about that many times on the show. He's a player's coach, but he's learned so much from the guy that he played under in terms of how to control every little detail of the game, how to play situational football. And the one big lesson from the Belichick era, there were many big lessons from the Belichick era, let's be fair, but one of the big lessons was don't beat ourselves. And that's what the Patriots set out to do last night. These were the conditions in which that mantra assumes extra normal significance because any mistake could have killed them. We'd seen Drake May fumble the ball several times and be responsible for, I think, 6 turnovers over 2 playoff games. If that had happened in this game, they were toast. I mean, to the point where at one point they were just running into a wall at the line of scrimmage. They didn't even want to advance the ball. They were just using up their 3 downs before punting it back to the Broncos, as you say, literally saying, right, you have a go then. You think you're so smart. You scheme something up there, Sean Payton. And Payton wasn't equal to the task. No,
he wasn't. And, you know, I mean, we all remember there's a Simpsons episode from a long time ago with the leader, and he kind of, it's this character who comes in and completely brainwashes the entire town of Springfield and It's he just gets them to do all their bidding, and that's kind of what Payton did at the start. I mean, you saw the CBS footage; everyone was going mad, forgetting the fact that Bo Nix was out of the game, and they had a quarterback who hadn't started in 3 years and has 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in his career. I mean, it was amazing that the confidence level from the Broncos. I mean, I get it. Broncos fans had a right to feel confident and good in the team. But I think in reality, when it all set in, and especially as the game went on, don't make mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. Stidham turns it over twice. The first one, I mean, he should have taken the sack. I think we can all agree on that. They were lucky to get away with it. But again, the Patriots ran it in soon after. And then that kind of floating throw up to that Christian Gonzalez plucked out of the air. But that's what the Patriots didn't do. May didn't turn the ball over. He played clean football. Both teams played pretty clean football in spite of the conditions. I mean, it was amazing. You could barely see the touch line. I mean, you could see the down markers, but you could barely see the touch line, which was pretty crazy. But yeah, clean football. They didn't beat themselves. They did what they had to do. They ran the rock really well. And May did exactly what it needed to do. 86 yards. He had, I think, he had 65 on the ground, which was. I mean, especially that last, almost like a bootleg right at the end where he went past the linebacker of the game. Just a great performance. You hear little snippets from Vrabel on the sideline, and he sounds exactly like a player's coach. Calm them down, tell them they can't beat us. Let's just keep getting out there. They're not going to be able to beat us. Just ramming that down the players' throats in the belief. And they didn't turn it over. They played a clean game, no mistakes. May didn't have to do a huge amount, and the Denver Broncos just didn't have what it takes to get past them.
Kieran O'Donovan, we talk about cliche alert, game of inches. Leonard Taylor gets a tiny fingertip on a Will Lutz field goal attempt that I think otherwise was nailed on. As good a kicker as Will Lutz is, that would have tied that game, and who knows what would have happened from there on. And it was called up from the practice squad, and go and watch his post-match interview online. And yeah, I won't spoil it for you, but
what did he say?
What did he say? Yeah, exactly. He dropped a pretty wild quote. That's a little bit of post-entertainment when you're finished watching us this evening, but it just seemed like over the course of 60 minutes, the Patriots were able to control all those little controllables, and they let the Broncos make the mistakes that ultimately undid them.
Well, as you said, a game of inches, and you also mentioned Mike Vrabel taking the good from what he learned with Bill Belichick, and that's what good coaches and good leaders do. They take the good and throw out the bad. Mike Vrabel doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be cold like Bill Belichick was to take the good in what he learned from Bill Belichick, and that's what it was. It was situational football. It was what to do in the right moment, and it was big players our big players, our no-name players stepping up, as you mentioned, getting that fingertip. The first time I saw that kick, we all thought, where I was watching, we all thought, it was just a poorly executed kick. And then you see the fingertip in slow-mo and you said, that's a game-winning play. In a game where such, as you say, call it again, fine margins are going to decide the game. I think the biggest mistake of the game was on the Broncos sideline. And Brian, you called it out early on in the game, Sean Payton not taking 3 points. And I get the analytics, and I get that, teams are being more aggressive, and it's a statement of intent to go for 7 as opposed to 3 early on. But that game, in those conditions, I mean, they had to have had a weather report and said, well, if we can get 3 early on.
Push back a little bit against this. And I know that the prevailing narrative, Brian's shaking his head, the prevailing narrative is, and I'm not fully gung-ho, go for it on every fourth down, dyed in the wool. Always do what the analytics says, because to your point, you have to have a feel for the situation in the game. You have to have a feel for where your team are and what they're doing. I don't think the problem was that they went for it on 4th and 1. I think it was the play call was the problem. And that was the wrong play. And if you can't pick up a yard on 4th and 1, I think there was a couple of things going through Payton's mind. And I've no time for people who make these, drop these hot takes based on hindsight bias. You can only evaluate the call based on the information that was available to Sean Payton at the time. Mm-hmm. Nobody thought the weather was going to be that bad in the second half. Yeah, there was some snow closing in, but nobody thought it was going to be that bad. He's playing with a backup quarterback. He's got to think, well, how many red zone trips are we realistically going to get here? And if we're not going to maximize our opportunities based on a backup quarterback and the offense not having the playbook open to it, maybe we need to go for broke here, because who knows what's going to happen later on. He's also looked at the Patriots, who'd had 2 3-and-outs at that point and hadn't been able to move the ball at all. I would also point out that even after they turned the ball over on downs, the Patriots just gave the ball back to them. So he was right to back his defense. He was right to go for it in 4th and 1. It's the wrong play call.
But I kind of feel like there's a bit of a contradiction in there, because if you like, I do agree with you that if the Broncos were to win last night, it was going to have to be on the back of a mammoth defensive effort, and if that's what you're backing to win the game, then you're kind of saying, every point we can claw to get with our offense, we'll take it. We'll put money in the bank early on. I know that's not house money. That's not what I'm saying, Conor. We'll put money in the bank as early and often as we can. You want 7, but Jesus, in a game like that, in a conference championship game, things are slightly different. And I know hindsight is great, but before that play was even called, I was thinking you have to take the 3 there last night.
They never got back to the red zone again. They have one of the best field goal kickers in the league, who was always going to be good if they could get there or thereabouts. Bar that block from Leonard Taylor. Yeah, look, we'll never get to the bottom of this one. There'll always be the pro going for a camp and the pro not going for a camp.
I get that they never got back to the red zone, but if you're backing your defense, I think Sean Payton was probably, he probably wanted to hang his hat on the fact that there was a really good chance that they could generate enough pressure to get a turnover on Drake May. And fair play to Mike Vrabel, by the way, they counteracted that. Like the last 2 quarters of that game last night, it reminded me of there was one team that could not generate a shred of offense, and there was another team that didn't try. They decided it was safer not to try and generate any offense because a 3-point lead was good enough. They decided a 3-point lead in those conditions was good enough to win the game. And I take your point that those conditions weren't foreseen from the first quarter, but that's the way it did play out. And it reminded me of when you were young and you played football on the street or you played football in the garden, and you got 1 goal up and you decided to kick the ball so far out over the ditch that if you couldn't find it again and you went in and said, well, I win, I'm ahead, I'm winning. So let's call it now. That game was over. In fairness, it was over with, a quarter and a bit left. And in fairness,
hashtag unconscious bias, Kieran. We weren't all lucky enough to grow up in the bucolic ideal of the countryside. Those of us in the
hashtag shithousery.
The hard streets of North Dublin had to play play street ball. There was no ditches. We kicked the ball too hard, you broke a car window, and then it was all being kicked off.
I'm sure there was plenty of neighbours and plenty of neighbours' gardens with an angry dog, so that you would have just decided it's not worth the fuss.
Oh, we couldn't even afford dogs where we grew up, Gary.
But Kirk Cousins was on with CBS before the game, and he made a great comp. He talked about Jarrett Stidham, and he was full of praise for Stidham, and in the ability that he had to throw the ball when you look back at the tape. But what he did say could be and was the Broncos' downfall is when you had to have it. He didn't have the rushing ability that Bo Nix would have given them, and it was just, again, we come back to fine margins. That was it. Kieran mentioned Drake May's rushing stats. Bo Nix didn't have it. They got 37 yards on the ground from RJ Harvey, so they just had no running game when the pass game was just dead and buried. So it was a foregone conclusion from a long way out.
Brian, this Patriots team, they've been getting piled on all season long. Oh, your schedule is too soft, and the pushback has always been when you can only beat what's out in front of you. They've beaten what's out in front of them all the way to the Super Bowl. Haven't really put a foot wrong this season. It's an unbelievable turnaround from where they were last year in one season. Like, this would have been the stuff of Robert Kraft's dreams. Bring in an expatriate. I mean, I don't know what the Strunk family up in Tennessee are thinking when they let this guy out of the building. He walks across to New England and only turns the team around and takes them to the brink of the Lombardi in season 1. It's one of the greatest one-season turnarounds we've seen. And there's been a few in NFL history, let's be fair, that St. Louis Rams have had one in their past.
Everybody seems to have forgotten that today, Conor. This has never taken place before. It nearly happened last year with the Commanders.
Yeah,
it's all done. It's all about the Patriots.
Yeah, recency bias, but it has been brilliant, and let's give them their flowers, and we'll spend plenty of time analysing them in the run up to the Super Bowl and how they match up against the Seahawks. That can all come down the line. But what they've done to get this far is, what every team tries to do. You just control what's out in front of you. You don't make mistakes. You wait for the game to come to you, offensively and defensively, and critically. And we've talked about this before. Yeah, they've made free agent signings, but largely with the roster that they rolled with last season. And they just improved both offensively and defensively as the season came along, and particularly defensively in the playoffs. Like, you and I are only a few weeks removed from sitting down with Shane Brennan, Patriots fan, and him saying the Patriots are going to go one and done unless they play any team but the Chargers. Their defense just isn't good enough to progress through the playoffs, but it was more than good enough.
Yeah, I think collectively as a unit over the course of the season, in particular the last 2 months, they have really come together, and that tends to happen with these teams when they build the momentum, and you've got a head coach such as Vrabel and a coaching staff there that are building the confidence into the team that they feel they can go in and measure up against any teams. And like Drake May, for me, hasn't played well in the playoffs. Well, that's probably a bit unjust. He hasn't played at a level in which we saw during the season. He hasn't had to, because he's had a defense which, it's going to flip in a way. The offense was so strong during the season. That was the kind of at the forefront.
Not only he hasn't played well, and the turnovers have been a particular black spot. I mean, he's been bailed out by the team around him. Like the Patriots have at times won in spite of Drake May, not because of him.
Yeah, you had turnovers against the Chargers. You had numerous turnovers against the Texans, both where he fumbled and both where the defensive strip sacks. And last night, early on in the game, he didn't look secure. And this is I don't want to go back over the conversation with the field goal, because you know how I feel about it. But that's why I felt they would have taken the field goal stage, because you touched on it there. They couldn't move the ball. They took a turnover. We said on our group it was going to take a turnover in the game, and they ultimately got the biggest turnover of them all, which probably should have been a touchdown in terms of recovering it and bringing it back. But obviously, if the play was blown dead, they go in off the resulting drive anyway. That's what it was going to take. But that's to the forefront of what this team has done all season. They've put together plans for every game, no matter who they're playing. Look, it's a big test ahead in 2 weeks, but they're there on merit. They're the best team in the AFC over the course of the season. I think collectively, they look like the Broncos going into this game, even despite the fact they weren't favourites in the quarterback situation. I thought, as a group, the Broncos are a better team, but you can't legislate for conditions like that. And they dealt with it better. They acknowledged the situation, and they played to the merits of what was in front of them. Let's not turn the ball over, as you said earlier on. Let's see, can Denver score on us? They couldn't. One first down in the second half, and it came in the fourth quarter. You're never going to win a game with that situation. It's for a fan base have been starved for a couple of years, Connor. They probably feel they're ready to come out and be supreme again. But it's going to be a big game in 2 weeks.
No, really will. We'll talk about the team they'll play in just a couple of minutes.